So welcome back everyone. So this is a little tool that if you're interested into dressing your frets with that, you would have to make yourself. So it's two pieces of wood. There's a through bolt that bolts here but clears the actual file right on top of it. And like I said, it's a file, so those pieces of wood are tied together and holds that little piece of file. So it was one of those files that I use. So it's a smaller one, and then cut at each end to remove like the non-file part, and then just slide it in there and then tighten it to get just the proper height to deal with the frets. So once one part of the fret, the file is done, you can flip it around 4 times so that you have a pretty good life out of it. As for the angle, if you're interested, here it's about 102 degrees, but because we have a 12 radius onto the fretboard, it ends up being a bit more in the, I guess, 95 to 97 degrees. So if you have a flat fretboard, you would have to make another one with that degree in there. So this is the little tool. So I know I'm done with the file here when I start seeing some plastic from the binding. So I know I went far enough. The edges of the frets are still a bit sharp, but we'll get to those later. So here I have plastic, so if it would not have been a bound fretboard, you would have like little wood dust starting to show, so not just the filing from the frets. So at this point we're gonna protect our fretboard with some tape, and then we'll be able to dress the frets for height and high spots and low spots and all that kind of stuff. So for this I'm using regular masking tape. So in between the frets here, what I'll do is put 2 pieces, one on each side. And for the first one, I can probably use a wider one. Just like that. So first thing I want to do is find my high spots. So I've got a Sharpie here, and what I'll do is mark the top crown of each fret. And then I'll use this fret leveler, which is just a piece of square aluminum with a piece of sandpaper, 180 grit, and I'm gonna tightly wrap it around here and make sure it's flat, and then I can go on top. Then that's gonna show me my high spots. Now to check the high spots here, what I'll be using is just a card scraper, like here. And you can hear there's a bit of a high spot there. Here it's pretty big, and here there's nothing. So what I'll do is use a Sharpie and mark down that this fret here has got quite a bit, so I put dots on both sides. That means that for me that one is higher, and then here I'll just put one because it's not that high here. And then when I get further down, so I'll have to switch. So this is another card scraper, but it's a small one, and then I can use it when this one is too big and it gets onto 4 frets. I can start using this one and then flipping over to this edge when I get to the very lower one at the bottom. So there are some specialized tools that you can use for that, but I find that if you do have card scrapers around and you do have the tiny one, I mean for a guitar, like this one would be plenty, but for a mandolin, or mandola in this case, you want a smaller piece. So this is this edge is straight, so there's no point for me getting that specialized tool. So here I have a bit of a trend. Starting here, I have a lot of frets that are a bit higher intermittently in between frets. So I'll go back here with my fret leveler. And then here I've got some high spots as well in the middle. So I'll try to hit that. And then a bit here on the top and a bit here on the bottom. So first I'll go back here and recheck them. And then when I recheck them, I'll use a different color. Okay, so here I kind of skipped directly to the bigger file because my high spots were not going down as fast as I would have liked with the sandpaper. So now that I kind of notched them down, I'll go back with the fret leveler and try to level everything, and then I'll go back and rock with the red color. So this time I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 high spot. A lot of them are in this section because of that high fret that kind of changed things around when I lowered this one. But I have a little corner here and the center one right here at the beginning, but that's very, very minimal now. So I'll be able to do most of the top ones with the fret leveler, and I'll use the file again at the bottom here. Now leveling all the frets will undoubtedly leave some flat spots on the higher spots frets, but most of them all have like a little scuff top. So this is where a Japanese set of file makes the job really easy. So this one is a fine file. This one is so mandolin and banjos and that kind of stuff. This one would be for guitars, and that's for the jumbo, so bass. And so each file have a coarse side and a fine side. So you can reshape the crown of your fret and then polish it somewhat with the other side. And then if you, those files are pretty expensive, so if you do that just for fun, there's always a way to recrown them, and for that you would use a triangular file just to recrown them. So I'll show you quickly. So if I was to use a triangular file, I would leave the tape obviously, because the tape protects the fretboard and like it's filing all over the files, and then you would just go around and recrown them. It's a tedious process, but you can get some decent result as well. I've done it before, and so you just go on each side and you roll your file as you go. And comparatively with this one here, all I have to do is go on top, stay straight, and this is recrowning the fret, and I do that until the point that I don't see any flat spots, and then when that's done I just flip over the file and then I just polish it quickly and move on to the next one. So the next step I usually do is get some super fine steel wool, and I'll do that while I have the tape on there, because that protects against the scratch. Like the wood travels this way, so if you go this way on your frets and there's no protection, you end up having perpendicular scratches on your ebony, which you don't want. So I'll do that before I remove the tape, and gives them a nice finish. So for the next step, I'm using this file from Stumac. This is to dress the edges here on the fret, because like even though we kind of put an angle with this tool here and then we rounded the top, sometimes like there's still some little sharp edges. That's what this file is designed for. Once again, you can use that triangular file, but you would have to be careful here in the corners not to dig into your binding. Now what's interesting on this file, it's like there's a file on both sides, and then I have a square edge on one side with nothing, no abrasion at all, and the other side is radiused. So I can use either side to get the job done on here, and all I do is like for this particular job I get the radius side, and then I can profile as I turn, and you don't need much here. You just round the sharp edges on this side and on this side, and then you can't feel it anymore. And once you get the hang of it, it's pretty quick. Because there's nothing here, I don't damage the edges there. Now at this point, if this instrument already had a finish on it, what I would do is I would go over with a little pad with polishing compound with a Dremel tool attachment, and then I would polish every fret to get them like almost to a mirror finish. And then I will also put, this is a fretboard conditioner, and that's conditioning the wood. So we'll do that after the lacquer is applied on this instrument. We don't want to do that right away, but those would be two more steps that I would be doing at this point if the finish was already on it. So I hope you guys found this little video interesting. It was focused on the fretboard itself, and the frets. So I hope there was a lot of information that you guys were able to get from this. And then in the next video, I'll be going around and fitting those bushings and the tailpiece and fitting the bridge and all this other little stuff that needs to be done on this instrument before we can play on it a bit. So I hope to see you in the next videos coming up, and until then, I wish you well.